Hey, did you take everyone's tomatoes, lettuce, and other vegetables away?
What? No.
So I'm going to start with a soliloquy about in defense of the Water Quality Control Commission. Okay. Yeah, no, I do. I wrote it, I wanted to write it down to make sure I got it right. There's a lot of comparisons about the WQCC, and I'm not stoked with what they came up with for probably very different reasons. I don't really know how to write a discharge permit for non-discharging permitting activities. But to give them at least a little bit of a fair shake, the WQCC is not NMED. It's made up of 14 appointed people who 10 of them have full-time jobs that they do this as part of that full-time job. So they're not experts in these fields. The other 4 are volunteers. They're appointed, they're not paid, and this is something that they do out of their passion for government and for water quality. So the deliberations were frustrating. They were difficult. They went back and forth a couple of times, but we did end up with a rule. So I'm just going to give you guys a quick summary of where we ended up with that rule. 20.6.8 is still called the reuse rule. One of the first things that they did was they put a sunset clause at the very beginning of that rule, which essentially sunsets the entire regulation in 5 years. So in 2030, the rule disappears and there's no longer 20.6.8. They didn't make it specific to anything or any part of it. It's the entire rule disappears. So we have to come back either as NMED or as a third party to come up with a new rule in order to make sure that there's still something in place. They removed a bunch of the definitions, which we were pretty much sure was going to happen anyway. And they revised many of the definitions to reflect what the Water Quality Act and the Produced Water Act identified as those definitions and what they should have been. And they also removed references in the definitions to bench scale industrial projects, demonstration projects, and they replaced it all with one a single definition for pilot projects. The frustration I know that has kind of gone around is that they left deliberations at one point with a 2,000 barrel per day authorized discharge permit, pilot project that would not require a permit. And then came back later at their next meeting and removed that 2,000 barrel per day authorization and put back into place the prohibition on any discharges whatsoever. And so at this point, they have now they've removed the NOI process that we had put into place and replaced it with a non-discharging permitting process that will require a full application. They lay out a considerable amount of information that they want included in that application, which pretty much is the NOI process turned into an application process. And they're going to want the basic info for the facility location, water quality info on what's coming in and what's going to be coming out of the pilot project. Again, not discharging, everything has to go back into the oil and gas field. They want to know what the research plan is, what the quantity is going to be of the produced water, the compliance with a bunch of requirements of notifying the surrounding groups. They are going to require financial assurance documents to be put into place, and they are also requiring the pilot project applicants to go through the full public notice process and be subject to the possibility of a hearing. So any pilot project, any use of treated produced water at all in the state of New Mexico will have to go through this process at this point. So my next 6 months are going to be spent developing an application form, a permit form, a actual template for permits with all the conditions that I can try and be fair and not arbitrary or capricious, which is, I think, some of the stuff that Matthias was somewhat referring to. But I think maybe good news, if I can give some good news, is that the rule is right now in a little bit of a limbo world where the statement of reason has been developed and signed off by the commission chair, and it needs to be put into the Sunshine portal, and it needs to be published, and there's a 30-day waiting period essentially after that, and that will happen within the next 60 days. So there's about 90, maybe a little bit more than that, days where the existing process that we had in place, the NOI process, where we were processing and issuing no discharge permit required letters, is still a process that we are to be using. And I asked my lawyer, and he said yes. So that's what we're doing. So right now, the existing process that we've been using for the last year and a half remains the same until the rule becomes officially issued. And of course, at that point, when it does become an official rule, it can be appealed to the state courts. And pretty much every supplemental rule the department has ever developed has been appealed to the state courts, and then to the Court of Appeals, and then to the Supreme Court. So there is a possibility that the courts will stay the rule. I think we're in the last two 50-50. I believe the dairy rule was kept in place, but the copper rule was stayed. So someone toss a coin and see if it comes up heads, the rule stays in place. Tails, it's stayed. But that's just about the entirety of the rule. There is some other subsequent sections of the regulations that they did add in there for requiring reporting and data reporting, as well as an authorization for us at NMED to require additional information or request additional information. But I think the most important part is that any application that comes into us after that rule becomes official will go through public notice number 1, announcement of an application being submitted. It'll go through development. It'll go through second public notice, which will include a 30-day comment period with an opportunity for someone to request a hearing in front of the secretary. And then that determination by the secretary could be appealed to the WQCC, and then a WQCC determination could be appealed to state court, and then up further through the courts. That is so exciting, I know. I can't imagine Mike having a question for me.
It is exciting in the sense, if I have a technology that I'm thinking about, then I need to get with you on my notice of intent, like Monday or Tuesday.
Yes?
Okay, all right, that's my question.
I mean,
Did everybody hear my question? Did everybody hear the answer? Okay, that's all I want to know.
yes. No, so we will be processing NOIs at the same rate and speed as we have been previously, but
I will say from my perspective, the New Mexico Environment Department has been very judicious in an NOI. Generally, it's been 3 to 4 weeks if the person does that right. And we have the list on how to do that. You have that on your website on how to do it. And everybody that I know that has worked with NMED to do that has been happy that the process was done in a timely manner. So for everyone out there that's thinking about it, I think the NMED does a great job on their NOI, and they've been very, very good to all of us. When I say all of us, for people that are interested in doing treatment. So thank you for your work on that, and thank you for explaining this, because it's a lot better than I got out of the discussions that I was at for 16 months.
Jason, kind of a follow-up to that, and then Hill, I'll hand it off to you. Is the rule going to be retroactive in any way? In other words, if there are existing pilots that have been processed under the previous or the NOI process, are they going to be subject to having to resubmit an application once this rule is finalized?
the question, so I asked that exact question to the same attorney, and the answer was no, that it's not going to be retroactive. That if we process an NOI, we've made a determination, we did that under the understanding that this was the situation. So if we do get bombarded with a whole bunch of NOI submissions, that may change the attorney's opinion, but at this point.
Okay. My question is what constitutes a discharge? If you use the water to produce concrete, does that constitute legally a discharge in New Mexico?
So there's a strange conundrum in the Produced Water Act versus the Water Quality Act versus our regulation that we've landed on. And the regulation addresses a use.
Any use?
Use, correct.
All right. Who else?
Not the most popular answer out there.
Anyone? All right.
Does Melissa have a question for me about?
She does not. No open questions right now. So I think you're off the hook.
I love Melissa's
So,
questions.
in the sake of time, I think we're going to keep moving along here. So thank you
Yeah,
very
no
much,
worries.
Jason. Appreciate it.